they say some things.
Hello. Adventure.
Love. Connection.
Risk. Passion.
Revolution.
Play.
Life, the Archetypal Tarot Podcast. Provocative mythology for the 21st century.
Hey, Cyndera, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Julienne.
How goes there in beautiful Pacifica, California?
Oh man, the weather has been gorgeous, crisp and clear, and a really magical and beautiful holiday just here locally.
Nice.
Yeah. I was excited for our card pulling this year. I happened to be in the evening of January 1st here in Pacifica, and the lights went completely out in the neighborhood. So I live near the ocean, so I looked out, and I live up on the hill, so I was able to look out, and there was no lights anywhere as the sun was setting.
Beautiful.
So I lit all these candles all the way around the house, and then I got your text, hey, we need to draw our card for the new year. I was like, this is the perfect setting. I was setting up for it without even knowing. So gave you a call, and I think as we did previously, we were drawing from the major arcana only. So I pulled those cards out, shuffled them up, gave you a call, shuffled until you told me to stop. And I drew one out, and I think you posted something today about people guessing.
Yes, I posted on the Instagram story to ask people which card what was their guesses to the card that came up for 2019.
And I looked over and I was like, really?
Really? It's like we're being hit on the head with this particular archetype. It's just like, no, you've been listening. You need to listen more. Listen more.
Yeah, she's not going away. The High Priestess.
The HP. Like, we're not getting away from her. I swear to Goddess.
We've had so many podcasts, I think, that have circled around this archetype, and it just is showing that, it hasn't gone away yet. This is still part of what we're working on and what we're looking into.
It is, and you know what, I was trying to remember how it first came up, and I think it was towards the beginning part of last year. So last year, just to remind everybody, we pulled the star card for 2018, and son of a bitch, it was a difficult year, I'm just going to say. But the meaning of the star, which is just, it's hope, amongst other things, but it was just really, to me, as I look back on what the star meant in retrospective, it was like, don't let the shit get you down. Keep your image in sight. Keep your desire for a better world, more connection, all of that. Don't let that go, or you're going to be crushed under all of this. And frankly, that I think was really important. So to me, it's just like a really good example of how certain things can come up. And I know most people, and myself included, see the star and go, yes! Like, yeah, that's awesome. But it could also, it doesn't mean that everything is going to go perfectly. It's more like, no, you got to stay focused on this. Like, don't let the bastards get you down, because it doesn't mean the road is smooth sailing. It means, like, you will get completely lost if you don't keep your star in sight. So the weather is about to get rough, and that's how I'm looking at it retrospectively. And it was, I think, early in the year that I kept going, dude, what's with the High Priestess? Like, my gut, my intuition was like, High Priestess, we gotta talk about High Priestess. And we did an entire, like, our longest show to date with the amazing Rash and the amazing Melissa discussing the High Priestess. Like, and here it is again, 2019, and our question was, what is our guidance? What is our focus? What should we focus on for 2019? What is our kind of guiding star, as it were? And it's the High Priestess. So, son of a bitch.
And so what was occurring to me is that, it may be these things that we're continue to circle around, but also what's new about the High Priestess? What haven't we seen that is, and there's plenty of mysteries wrapped up in this card. So what's emerging that's new in this year that will be a new circling for the High Priestess?
And what is it reaffirming, frankly? Since it came up again, it's kind of like, knock, knock. Oh no, I'm going to bust the door down now. We were knocking last year. We're busting the door down now, like the deep symbolism of it. And then I can't help but think tomorrow we have, what is it, Druid women entering Congress or entering, like, that's a pretty big indicator, right? I saw, I believe it, I'm a nerd. I saw an episode of Doctor Who. I was watching an older, from maybe 2 years ago, and there's a line that says that somebody said, "Oh, what the future? The future is female." And Doctor Who, who in this instance is a man, says, "We can only hope." And with that, the new Doctor, the new regeneration of the Doctor, is played by a woman. And that is, the show's been on 50 years, or, it's been around 50 years. And it caused a big ruckus because, both men and women alike were like, no, Doctor Who can't be a woman. And then there's the rest of us who literally, our eyes teared up when they announced it. We just felt so seen and so recognized. So for my nerdy bit, the big things is there's a lot more for the feminine archetypes to show up. So yeah, it is a big deal, and it's not the Sun card, it's not the Empress, it's this cool character, this mysterious character, the High Priestess.
And she's able to sit between these extremes, so you're often seeing her between two pillars, and she's also connecting above and below. And so being able to just kind of sit in quiet between extremes, between major assumptions, I think has a world of patience around her, which I think we're still in this realm of witnessing, experiencing, making sense, digesting a period of rapid change, rapid threat. It's a lot to take in and to sit.
And it's to me, it's so how is a High Priestess a verb? And I think that's a lot to do with what you're talking about, because it is deeply, deeply sitting, right? But to recognize that metaphorical sitting is really, really letting, really being open to the truth of what's happening. So it's not action, reaction. It's observing and absorbing and transmuting, right? So you're not just simply running out and doing things. And to me, this card isn't simply, I think what we concentrate on is how do we then, what actions and what connections can be made with the deeper knowing. So you don't go off half-cocked, as it were. And
right.
the feminine essence, and this is just, it's a question and I kid you not, like it comes to me daily of the understanding that the major narratives of our world and our society have been patriotic or patriarchal, right? Patriotic. Freudian slip. Because patriotism in the United States anyway is hyper masculine, right? It's about being the best. It's about conquering. It's about competition. It's at its worst, it's dick wagging. It's very masculine. So to look at what is the energy of the feminine, and we talked about this in a previous podcast just a couple of months ago, that the movement, the verb of the feminine is not the agency, action, do things. It's connectivity, it's relationship, it's community, it's process, right? Understanding processes and seeing process as important as product. And that typically process is like secondary. It's like, oh, well, whatever, do whatever process to get the end result. All that matters is the end result. And I getting the sense that a huge amount of imagination is going to be necessary this year. And the imagination is our relationship to creativity, which is also very feminine, and it's also process oriented. So, God, it's hard. It is really, I find it being very, very hard because I think partially because the patriarchal story is achieve, get, make. And this is like calling to pay attention to everything before the achievement. The achievement is the sense of connectedness, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't go, I'm going to run out and make relationships. It's like, no, I'm going to have to sit, I'm going to have to listen, and I'm going to have to pay attention and have imagination, which is, for some people, and I'm going to include myself in that generally, not the first thing I want to go do. I want to go do instead of just be. And the being leads to then inspired action and the imagination. But I think it is really, imagination is something that we need to call upon. And the connection to the God, the inner goddess, the connection to the goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a phrase that came to me at the end of 2018 was in evaluating my card reading practice. It doesn't really follow a business model like, I may have tried in the past, but I realized, this is a service for the individual imagination and for the soul of the world. That was what occurred to me. And it's simply a practice that I just will do wherever I can. And it's something I would like to offer our listeners as well when we can get it up on the Patreon page, but it's just something I've got to do and just keep doing it. I don't know where it leads or what happens in all of its effects, but it's something that I know I'm called to do. And so looking at what your practices are and what those things are that are a conversation with the great mystery to keep things unfolding in new ways, imaginative ways, I think will be really important for this year.
I hear you, sister. And the questions, the limited amount of readings that I do, the questions lately in the last 3 to 4 months have really been around people who are, I don't even know if there's a title, spiritual practitioners, or, that they, maybe they do card readings, that they do any number of things, but they want to move into doing that for a living. So that's a really, really big question, I think, for a lot of people. Having the support around self-care, or how you can deal, the person can deal with their own individual staying in tune, staying centered and present, and everything that it takes to really provide any kind of spiritual service is the most important thing. And then making it a business is really, really tricky, I think, for many people. And that kind of, it brings in, it's like this feminine, right? So the feminine process of being a conduit for the divine for other people, and being in this role, having the boundaries that you need to have around doing, it doesn't matter what, whether you're doing Reiki healing, or you're doing, spiritual readings, or acting as a spiritual director, all of those things, you have to have, healthy boundaries, and then all the self-care. But then you throw the business into it, and the business tends to be much more of generally the masculine, about, like having a business plan, and your income, the roof over your head, the food that goes into your mouth is now, if it's going to be solely through this work, that brings a lot of difficulties that aren't just practical. It mixes in something that's a whole nother level that everybody kind of does it their different way. But I will say personally, having worked with a lot of really brilliant teachers and watched a lot of people who've kind of made it, they make their full living, and they write books, and they're on Oprah or whatever. There's a ton of shadow work that comes up, because the business side, that how do you do that? I honestly can't tell you that I know that many people who make a really who are publicly known and make a really good living doing quote unquote spiritual work, that don't wrestle with huge blind spots and shadows that are naturally attracted to that light. That's not to say that you can't make a living doing it, but I often wonder, and this is the same for people who do creative work, what sort of freedom do you want to have? Because you can't have a lot of freedom when you're making your living from it. Like, there's always a trade-off. There's always, and some people just get to this blessed state where all the business comes to them. They have that intention that is pure enough, and they work to keep it pure to bring the business to them. But I don't think that's the only model. I think it's fine to have a muggle job. You can have something that pays your rent, and then the rest of it is all just something that you do because you're supposed to do it. And I think it's, I don't know, we could talk more about that, but I think the High Priestess is really pointing the inner goddess, and she's not out there handing out business cards or doing a podcast. She's sitting there. You know what I mean? She's just.
Yeah. Yeah, even her veiledness is interesting to me because, I've always struggled with just marketing or something, getting myself out there, getting my work out there. I find it excruciatingly difficult. And the High Priestess, she just sits with her wisdom. She knows what she has, and people come to her when the time is right. And I think that I can appreciate working that way and having a day job at the same time to make ends meet. But to me, the separation feels clean and good at this time. So I'm learning a lot from that.
Yeah, and likewise, I think until you've done it for 100% living, and I certainly have doing archetypal consulting. So I've lived knowing that I could make a good living from it, and kind of understand the mechanics and everything that sort of needs to be put around it. And I think where I am now, not so much working with people individually with archetypes, but certainly using all of my knowledge and my own practices and things, being an officiant, being a priestess, essentially,
Right.
that it is a much better balance because I do have other income streams. I have things of value that I contribute in other ways that are not strictly within the priestess realm, that I really struck a nice integration point where I can really just put the energy that I need to into the weddings, and now I'm doing blessings where I don't feel the pressure to make more, do more, do more, do more because I need to pay my rent. I don't have I need to do X number of weddings a month in order to pay my rent. I don't want to have to worry about that. I want to bring everything I can to the process for the people I work with. And I think business will sometimes require you to skimp a little bit. You know what I mean? So now I can really just concentrate on bringing just to delight every person that I work with, and to bring what I'm supposed to be doing to them without strictly having it related to, my livelihood. And so there's just a great deal of space for me there to do that. And the business does come. People do show up. So it is, and there's a natural set value to what I do, which is also really helpful. People do see it as a valuable service. I don't have to convince them of the value of it, which is lovely.
That's right.
Yeah. So the High Priestess, there's a lot about sort of like the occult, the hidden, the secret knowledge in that, which is, as we said, a little frustrating. But in a lot of the images, she is surrounded by this incredible kind of feminine bounty, the pomegranates and everything is there.
She's bridging sort of earthly fruits with the cool distance of the moon. So she's straddling once again these opposites. And I think we feel things so strongly in this period of time. We want to take action. We were talking last night about, why isn't it the Chariot card, right?
That's if I had
no, let's take some action, but she's reminding us that we need to hold the tension of the opposites. We cannot act too hastily when we haven't seen the whole picture. She has the perspective of the moon, the perspective of stillness. And I think that is a really great reminder, because if we rush into change too fast, too quickly, though change we see as necessary, of course, but if we're rushing in too quickly, that we're going to be blind to certain realities and increase the polarization between people. So I think she really has a wonderful way of sitting between the tension of the opposites.
And getting a real understanding for oneself of, why are we doing this? Why is this important? If we are really, really in touch with the why, and how that why is actually shared by people who have on the surface opposite beliefs of us. I think, to me, and I can't help but think, of civic engagement, politics, whatever you want to call it, that, the yelling of it isn't helping, but the connectivity beneath the surface, for example, say healthcare. Healthcare is really important to everybody. And that was really evident. That was really, really evident in the 2018, elections in November. That it's such a huge concern for everybody, but the people aren't going to understand each other if they're not listening. And I think the people that are invested in this deep listening are the ones that are going to be able to actually show results. And it's kind of like getting down to like the heart of the issues. It's almost comical at a certain level, where you can take two people who might be like opposite of each other on the political spectrum, but frankly they do care about exactly the same things, and they really can bond on that. They really can, if people actually stopped and listened and had used a bigger imagination than just the two. So, and I think frankly in some ways it's a hard fist will meet another hard fist, and you'll never be able to shake hands. Even if the intention of one is to make that connection, you can't just keep going at it the same way. So.
Yeah, that's right. And I just think as tempting as it can be to sort of demonize the opposite, I think that we're really called to a time of listening and openness and trying to see it from a third way as opposed to a polar way. That's what I'm really getting from the High Priestess.
And part of that is just really, really understanding what people most care about. And if you were to just make sides, not throwing either or out, but realizing the both and of it, and really letting that sink in. Just really, really understanding that, people tend to want the same things, and just how much fear is running the show. And the misdirection. I think we see a lot of the shadow magician happening now, real shadow magician. And so I think the antidote to the shadow magician, quite frankly, is the High Priestess.
Interesting, yeah. And she does follow that magician card. She is in many ways responding to that magician card. It might be interesting if you're going to do a bit of active imagination, to pair those two up and see what sort of conversation they would have.
Yeah, and just look at all the various image representations. Google the High Priestess tarot, take out your decks and just line up all the different images, and really see how different artists throughout the years have represented the High Priestess. So there's a bunch there, but it really, really is. It's the feminine. People might be tired of hearing that, but but it has to be done in the. I think it is. There's a lot of people threatened. They're feeling threatened by the feminine, and there's when I hear women themselves say that not that many people are being sexually harassed. They're just making it up. I just groan. When you hear a woman defend a sexual predator, that's when I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, when I see her, the feminine robes depicted in this card, in the Rider-Waite, she actually looks kind of like Mother Mary in some ways. But I was remembering something. For me personally, I've worked a lot with pagan beliefs and pagan imagery. That's always been my, I've been very independent from the Christian dynamic there for a long time. But circling around this Christmas period of time, I was like, I want to come to everything with an open mind, because this matters to many, many people very deeply. And, I want to be open-minded. So I remembered something that my mom said when I was a kid, because I was debating with her. I was like, but it's all, masculine imagery, God is a man, the Holy Spirit is a male figure, the Son is this male figure. And my mom said, but Jesus has this amazing, he's very feminine. Mm-hmm. He wears these flowing robes, and he's got this open heart, and he's very vulnerable, and he has these incredible forgiving qualities. And I thought that was interesting food for thought. And I circled back around to that memory of what my mom had said. And I was like, oh, right. But how does the feminine, how can it be embraced in men as well as women?
Well, I think, it's easy for me to say that Jesus really walked the earth as the integrated masculine and the feminine. He was, represented in a male body, and being treated as a male, and, the son, and, he's the son of God and all of that. But his actions and what he did was very much an integration of the feminine in a masculine being, right? In what is recognized as a man. The actual teachings of the Sermon on the Mount, if we actually had more Christians, true Christians in the world, we would not have the problems we have. We just wouldn't. If truly Christianity was embraced as Jesus's actual message in the way that was said over and over and over in the New Testament, do as I do, then we wouldn't have the problems we have now. That's the kind of ironic fact, but it really was inclusivity. And it wasn't about getting more money or getting ahead or competition. It was more connection. When he came here to connect people, and there's the language around Jesus saves. I'm like, yeah, if you act like Jesus, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that actually would save the world if people did act like that. I think, it is very much an integrated character from my perspective. But hey, I was raised Catholic. We just paid someone to read us the Bible once a week.
I was actually watching that film, Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon last night. Have you seen that film?
Not for ages.
Yeah, it was my first time. I just started it last night, but story of Saint Francis of Assisi, and I think it's very much that theme of he was living Jesus' message as opposed to the way the church was functioning at the time. So it's a really beautiful study of embracing those riches of generosity and openness and connection with nature. And he's so sweet, he's so vulnerable, he's so girly in some ways. It's just so much fun to watch in that film. So that's the Sister Moon element in that. There's a becoming nun in that, Claire. But maybe that is a reference as well to the High Priestess. Who knows?
So Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon. I think that hits the nail on the head in terms of the High Priestess. And there's two other things that come to me specifically around this. You said that the image of the High Priestess did remind you of Mary, of the Catholics, call the Blessed Mother. And something that's really beautiful about Mary, who's also called the Immaculate Heart, the Immaculate Heart of Mary. If people aren't familiar with the icon of Mary, I really recommend looking into it. I was raised Catholic, and from a very, very young age had a real deep, loving relationship with Mary, with our Blessed Mother, all through my whole life. And that's something I definitely have kept my relationship with her. And I think this is now, like, when I see the High Priestess, there are so many iterations. It's so beautiful. The iconography and the images, and every culture has taken the image of Mary and made it look like them, which is really what she does. And there is no face. I mean, if you grew up with her with the blonde hair and the pale skin, or people grew up with Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico and South America. She looks like them, and I think that is part of her beauty and her mystery is she looks like everyone. You know, we have Black Madonnas, we have, you know, she goes by so many names, and you know, nobody that I can think of right now does a better sort of honoring and interpretation from a Jungian perspective of our Blessed Mother is Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves. She's kind of my shiro, but she put out a book and an audio recording called Untie the Strong Woman, and it's all about the Blessed Mother, and I highly recommend that. Even if you're familiar or you're raised Catholic or what have you, that, especially the recording, I actually enjoy her speaking voice. She's a natural cantadora. She's a storyteller. To really, you know, check out Untie the Strong Woman. It's so beautiful, and you can tell that she has this deep, deep dedication to, you know, we call her our Mother and Our Lady. And one iteration of her is this silent, deeply listening feminine character like the High Priestess. She's also the Empress. She's many, many, many things, but I am drawn to that. And it's interesting that I was asked to do a form of a quinceañera, which is a rite of passage of a girl to go from childhood into becoming a young woman. And I just finished writing the ceremony. It was a really great challenge for me because it called upon me to bring my Catholic out, but also I'm integrating some Hawaiian perspective and Hawaiian tradition in it, and it's for a family. They're either Mexican or from Latin America, but they're allowing their daughter to choose what she wants for her quinceañera, and so it's a very kind of like the old tradition is very kind of like the masculine blessing the young lady, and you know it's beautiful in its own right, but my challenge to write it in such a way that honored the feminine was a really difficult but good challenge. And I did include a rededication to the Blessed Mother as the mother of all of us, the great heart, the great refuge, as the Buddhist calls it. So that to me was really important and a deep honor and difficult to do, you know, to swallow the fact that the Bible is all masculine pretty much, to really dive into that and really see the goodness in it and not just react in my feminist way.
Right.
So.
What beautiful work that you're doing as a priestess in that regard. You know, I've heard sort of cultural criticisms around that particular ceremony, around kind of dressing the girls up as brides and the pregnancies that ensue and things like that. But I don't think the answer is to get rid of ritual ever, or to get rid of cultural traditions. I think that we can infuse them with new meaning, with this expanded awareness, and I think that's what you're doing with what you did with that, which was just absolutely beautiful.
We all need rituals around rites of passage, and that's something I talked to both of her parents about. I was like absolutely, when they called me, I was like, yes. And it's incredibly important. And you know, religions do have rite of, you know, in the Roman Catholic there's confirmation, but it's not strictly for women. And then there's bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. We don't, you know, for regular people walking around or maybe not religious or mildly religious, we need that. I think it's really important, and that's something I hope that I'm called to do more, whether someone's religious or not, to have a ceremony. You know, and part of just the beauty of a ceremony is taking the person and holding their hand and saying, thank you. Thank you for being you. We are gathered together to say, thank you for being born. You are exactly what you should be. You know, that kind of, if you can just put someone in a bubble of love for, you know, 10 minutes even, that is going to make a huge impact on them and their ability to see their own value and to see that value in other people, and have a ritual around it. Like, that's massive, right? That is massive.
That is really big. And we can find those moments with the people we love and trust in unexpected places, hidden places. I had an experience over this holiday break of being told by my partner that he recognized that I was thriving. He said, "You're really thriving right now." And it happened to be in this beautiful place in Sierraville, out in these hot springs in the middle of the night with stars around and everything. But the message there was so simple, but it went really deep to the part of myself that I guess you're always wondering, how am I doing? Am I just surviving, or is there more to it? And being able to notice that in each other and to affirm it, I think is a beautiful grace we can afford each other.
Absolutely. And I think too, in relation to how we relate to nature and getting connected to that's something part of the High Priestess, but it's a very meditative card, right? It is asking us to meditate, to clear our minds of thought, to take a moment to quit believing our own thoughts. The deeper connections, which frankly I can't say I master all that often, but it is a reminder. So I think I started with, this is really son of a bitch, really the High Priestess again, because I think my my inclination is like the Chariot, but
right.
the Chariot's fine. That'll come along, but without the underlying sort of connectivity, and I think to me that's the verb, is connectivity for the High Priestess.
Absolutely, yeah. And just kind of emerging from the solstice, which the root of that word meaning standing still, I feel that stillness with her. And I guess, even though we've studied this card a lot, I'm still learning that lesson of stillness in certain moments. And when we drew this card last night, we asked our dreams, okay, what's new? What is this card telling us that's new? And I dreamt that a friend of mine was on a tarot game show. And I was in the audience rooting her on, and you had to answer questions, or what we thought you'd have to answer certain questions about the tarot quickly before anyone else. But then the moderator of the game show said, "Okay, for this next round, you must just be quiet." And of course, my friend, who in waking life is very talkative, she just starts. Yeah, she's a bundle of fun, Sagittarius. She's like blah 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 do 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 do. And I said, "Why are you talking right now? It's the most simple instruction ever. Just be quiet." And then coming up out of this dream and saying it out loud, I'm like, oh wow, that really is the priestess's message here, is being quiet. I guess I need to listen to that.
That's perfect. You ended up having a beautiful symbolic relational to the High Priestess dream, and mine weren't. Although your interpretation of my dream of being able to drive through this very clear water when everyone else thought, oh, you shouldn't drive through this water, that I was able to do it. That was good. That was kind of the big nugget of that I got from my kooky dream.
What a great lesson that is, though. Just your sort of, and I was actually like that about my dream too. When I first thought about it, was like, oh wow, what is that? It's kind of, I don't know, stressful and not that profound. But then when I said it out loud, and then when we shared together, and then when I heard your dream, I was like, that's amazing. You're able to go through that water and encourage other people to go through that water because you're familiar and comfortable in it. It's home to you. That is High Priestess in and out. That is beautiful. And you mentioned some other part of your dream about
turkey sandwich.
Okay, no judgments, first off, but the establishment that's serving food appears to be closed to your friend in the dream, but it's actually, it's open. You just know.
Yeah.
And to me, that is the High Priestess as well, that she has sort of this cool closed off look about her, like she is impenetrable. But there is actually a great opening in this card, an openness in this card. So I felt like your dream embodied both of those sort of moon elements of openness and water, and just a deep knowing beyond appearances, a deep knowing beyond appearances.
Well, thanks. I still want a turkey sandwich. I'm still like, wow, that really sounds good.
Hey, after dream work, you got to eat. It's fuel the soul, fuel the body.
Apologies to my vegan friends out there. Oh, goodness.
Well, this was wonderful. I think this podcast was only supposed to be 15 minutes, but I think
yada yada yada. Yeah, no, we can't help it. We're loquacious. So we've got at least another year with the High Priestess. I am really interested in, like, seriously, are you still listening? Are you out there, podcast listeners? Hear me now. Let us know. Find us on Twitter, find us on Instagram, find us on Facebook. I really, really want to know how people, like, are you surprised that we got the High Priestess again? What's your take on it? Do you have questions? Do you have feedback? Like, what have we missed in this experience of High Priestess? So she's sticking around for, ever, I'm sure, but another year of the High Priestess, bring it on. I want to know what people's reactions to this are, and I know there's more than a few High Priestesses out there who listen to our podcast. So speak to us. Do not remain silent in your chair. Type something out to us.
That's right. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. Well, Happy New Year to everybody. And we have a cool podcast next month with a couple of guests talking about archetypes and body image. Ooh. Well, aloha to everybody.
Aloha. Goodbye. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We know you could have done something else with the last 40-ish minutes of your life, but we're so glad that you spent it with us. And we are totally curious to know your take on the High Priestess for 2019. So find us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and let us know what you think. We always love hearing from you. And if you would like to become one of our most favorite people in the whole world, become a patron. Just visit tiny.cc/tarot, and you too could be like one of these awesome humans: Sarah, Geneva, Richard, Peter, Rash, Allie, and Yvonne. Thank you guys. Your support makes all of this happen, and you make us smile every day, for reals. The show is produced by Both And Media, and the theme music is by The Lunar Group.